So I'm going to give you another quick rundown here in a second. But first, I just want to say it's very frustrating being as censored as I am. And there's a reason. I can teach you things you're not supposed to know. So the rundown, what you're looking at, it doesn't come up, and it would if people put in the time. You're looking at the ether. It's the blade and the chalice, if you're into Dan Brown, who disseminated lesser magic because he works for our masters. If you've heard of Freemasons, you probably would hear compass in the square. It's the same thing. It's the ether. You got fire and you got water. Now, I'm going to show you two things, and I want you to think about these. And what I want you to ponder is, are we being misled in how these are being represented? So when you see an upright triangle, which you see Shiva off to the left, that's fire. And it is representative of a phallus, a dick, a cock. Fire. I did say fire. Is fire usually blue? I mean, you do get some blue flames in there, depending on the heat. But take it with a grain of salt. And then when you look at an inverted triangle, that has to do with water. A vagina, a pussy, a quim, a yoni, however you want to think of it. Oh, and I should have said, what was it? A linga, right? Shiva linga? Is that right? Or is the linga? I always mix them up. If Shiva is the dick, then linga should be the vagina. Back to point. Should it be red? Should it be blue? What do you think? I want you to think about that and appreciate that if it is that, these are flipped. This isn't the only example you'll see out there, but you also have to understand that our masters purposely muddy the waters and change things so that you don't understand what represents reality. It's the fusion of the two, which would be purple, but then I need you to think in terms of the heart chakra, which is usually green. Red and blue don't make green. And that touches on something really big having to do with the system you and I are a part of, something you could observe, something you might already know what I'm dancing around. And then you also see it in the programming. Tonight's All Hallows Eve. You know, building up to, Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. You could think of Harry Potter horse shit, which corrupted the Hallows. Because now when you look up Hallows, you're going to find Harry Potter shit, superficial shit. That's what I mean by corrupting it. That's another thing to think about, because we are talking about two pyramids or two-dimensional triangles that represent reality in a big way. Yeah. So what was I getting at with this? I haven't eaten today, just for what it's worth. I'm all over the place. The other thing I was going to show you having to do with this, another example of it, is someone who has controlled opposition. He works for Big Pharma. He's misleading people in a number of ways. And I've babbled about this. He censored me because I was explaining shit to people who follow him on Instagram in particular. And this is his sigil. The sigil he uses. So does he know something we don't? Or is he misleading people? Because this is the ether again. And naturally, it doesn't form the ether. Instead, what he's knocking out, if you look closely, I mean, you do see the ether in there if you think of the 2 points creating the compass and the square. But there's a heck of a lot more to this. You also got the Superman sigil in there, which you could look up number file in Superman for a very superficial understanding of what I'm dancing around again. Oh yeah, and I remember what I was talking about with All Hallows Eve before I ran off on a tangent, and I'll come back to that in a second. He's knocking out an hourglass and a bunch of other jazz in here, an inverted hourglass, crudely speaking. There's a lot in here, but is he misleading people in this regard as well? I mean, there's other examples that are pretty obvious, but people aren't digging up any of the roots, so they don't recognize things for what they are. But again, you got that and that. Now here's something else to think about before I come back to the All Hallows Eve thought. How should I put this? These two things are paradoxical. They sing to one another. Just as you have a battery with a negative and a positive side, there's a flow of energy and it dances with itself. You see this in the multiples of 9, how one channel to the left will course one way and the channel to the right will course the other way. And with their powers combined, they perform a function, which denotes spin. What maintains you and I, the life, the semblance of reality, is subject to that. But just like when a boat is on a lake or a river and it goes fast enough, it creates a wake. There's a counter spin that is produced. And you're never told to think in terms of all of this. But you should. You're also lied to at every single fork in the road. Because you're not supposed to understand what reflects reality. None of us are. I spent years digging this shit up and piecing things together that all sing to itself. It all connects and it paints the same picture. So then I jump on here, I'm usually censored, and I rattle some stuff off that reflects reality, and most people don't give a fuck and or see it. It's tricky. It's really tricky. I want you to remember that these two things are paradoxical in a way. They're recursive. They sing to each other. It's cyclic, however I should put it. So in some ways, the blue is singing to the red, and the red is singing to the blue. You see this every fucking day. You got sunrise and sunset. One's known as twilight. It's the Doppler shift. That's why our masters polarize us. Because these things are reflective of you and I and the system at large that we are a part of. And the flat earth and the globe theory are both misdirection. That's why none of this comes up. That's why it's not applied. You don't get any grassroots approaches. And here's what I want you to think about. Since it's All Hallows Eve, and we're talking about a 31, having to do with the thinning of the veil as we've been taught, but people don't think in terms of. Green, color. I want you to think of that. Word, night. I want you to think of that. What's another one? Word, 8. I want you to think about each one of those. Night, green, and 8. And I don't know if I should spell it out for you guys. I also want you to think of this. Aurora Borealis. And keep in mind, this isn't purple, the royal color. It's green, having to do with the heart chakra, having to do with the system where we're at. But people confused with two outlines our masters gave them, the flat earth and the globe theory, because they're in place to mislead you. What was the other thing I wanted you guys to think in terms of? Hold on, maybe I'll remember in a second. Oh yeah, this. Here's a quick example. Michael J. Fox, Frighteners, Ghosts. Kind of blue in there. Usually if you watch Hollywood movies, they're usually a green glow. It's usually a green glow. Green glow ghosts movies. Oh, that didn't work, did it? Thought maybe it would bring it up. But Google's no longer a search engine. And maybe I just use shitty keywords too. It could be on me in this case. But I know you've seen, if you guys have watched a bunch of fucking media programming on the box, you've seen ghosts in Hollywood movies, and they have a green tint to them for a very good reason. Again, because it has to do with the thinning of the veil. If nothing else, write down the English equivalents. Night, green, and what was the other one I rattled off? 8. The number 8. And work with those. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch other videos where I explain things to you. And as always, what the fuck do I know? Thanks for hanging out. I can teach you things you're not supposed to know. Imagine what I could teach you. And yeah. Fucking tired of being censored.